Whew, wee. Well, hello, good afternoon, and howdy. It is Tuesday of the week, and of the many things to do, I'm happy to just made it this far, of course. The most random thing, it certainly helped encourage me to just jump in here and knock this one out, but out of nowhere. I mean, there've been some clouds in the sky most of the day here in Richmond, or RVA, and out of nowhere, it just decided one of those ones where you start leaning back and, well, where you're already leaning back and sitting down for the first time after getting home from work. And what are the dogs doing? Open the window. Wow. It's raining and with some fierceness. And it has taken a break or stopped for good, who knows, but it made me laugh. Excuse me, maybe we need it. I'm sure a little extra water won't hurt anything, and you know, I'm already in the house, so I'm not complaining. And excuse me, of my little tasks here, I have a well, I still have my list. I'm trying to decide which ones I'm going to do first. But, which topics I enjoy the most, the ones I can come in and knock out pretty quickly, and it's just a good afternoon. Uh, Once again, I'll try to get to sleep a little early. Depending, I know that I well, I know that I'm gonna have to get some rest. I may have a couple of days off this week, but I have at least one more day to go. So, why not be fully charged? We'll charge. So, yeah, it's just a good day, I suppose. I probably my favorite thing. I got to finish the hardcore history, most recent hardcore history, the Armageddon, something Armageddon Part 4. It's Water from the Sky a little more again. It's funny because first of all, it's a multi-part series about World War I, and so far he has focused on. Well, he always brings it back to the focus of the human aspect of everything. The men in the trenches, how, there was a flood, so both sides, meaning the, Triple Entente and the German soldiers, they were flushed out of their um, trenches, and they were all just out there, and they were kind of looking at each other, and it's funny because he made a point of highlighting the human aspect of war and the persuasion and the demands, I suppose is easier to say, of the officers who were trying to get the men. Oh no, don't talk to them, don't shake their hands, don't smile at them, don't do this, don't do that. And it's funny because I suppose this might have been where it's from, but if the show Defiance on Sci-Fi Channel, I saw, I think, the first episode and a half, and the idea that I got from what seems to happen is that there were multiple factions at war with different people, and the people fighting decided there was no reason to fight, and they decided to put their guns down despite what they were being told despite they were being told to kill each other, to murder each other, and to walk on each other's corpses and blah blah blah. Anyway, that's the type of environment that they were trying to cultivate, even in the one of the worst wars in history with all the death. I mean, another reason to respect the Russians. I mean, he just went over a couple of the movements. So they had, a success against Austria-Hungary, of course, because Austria-Hungary was not a real power. They're on the way out. But losing 1 million men, 1 million casualties, I think something like 60,000 dead, something like that. Rest injuries. That is why the Russian people are hardy. That is how they have such an inherent strength about them. So it's things like that where you're being no weapons given to you. You're he made an excellent point that I don't know if he spent much time with as much time as I expected him to, but during this period, Russia, their soldiers were still wearing cloth hats instead of metal helmets, like the other powers started to implement in this time period. And no time to industrialize to the point where it could support the war effort and militarize. And it's just amazing when you think about it. I mean, they were, they'll send, 200,000 people out, go that way. And that'll be the order, weapon or not. So it's just amazing. It's just amazing the retelling of World War One. And I can remember, of course, in history class learning about quite a bit of this, but it was interesting then, and it just happens to be a little more interesting now with the different way of telling the story. And I mean, he so far has focused on the Western Front. I mean, was it Ypres song and Verdun, some of the bloodiest battles in World War One. I mean, the way he describes it, I can see them being demoralizing to the French for Verdun, and Ypres was earlier, but song that, I mean, for the British troops, I mean, that was after Van Moltke. Van Moltke was a German leader. Well, pretty much in that period, there were several losses: loss of life, loss of position, loss of everything, and it's such an interesting perspective to look back on. And I mean, there was human lives that were lost, and it's an interesting period. And I think the favorite story of mine from the story is I forgot exactly how I put it, but the question is, how do you encourage enlistment into the armed forces? And the British route was to hire young women to walk around and look for men of age that could be in the military, and they would scream at them, call them cowards, and put feathers on them, or put a white feather on their hat, or a pin they would pin to them, something like that, where, excuse me, you were embarrassed to not be already enlisted, ready to give your life. And I mean, it's actually another part that he said toward the end that was interesting, that it's one of those silent protest type of things that nowadays wouldn't be enough to make any difference, but the silent he said the excuse me, with the England and France, I think both sides were saying that when the new enlisted men would enter, walking past the officers, they would give a short, like a lamb, or a to simulate lambs to the slaughter, because wave after wave after wave they would just keep sending, no matter how many people died, and despite the fact that no progress was being made. So it's very interesting to hear those little parts that you wouldn't really hear in normal times. I mean, any type of protest when you're in the military, that's, there were people being shot in the face for being shell-shocked and losing it. I mean, the loudest noises ever recorded at the time, and no single thing in history to compare them to. And the human mind, it had its limits, and some people did, freeze. And it's something to say about wartime. And the first time that, I mean, civilians being allowed to hold weapons and to become a part of a war is very new, very, very new. I mean, let's see, if I remember correctly, we're talking pre-Napoleon, so see, 1870, 1845, 1848, 1830s. I mean, not very long at all. If you think about it, at that point, we're right now. He ended the episode in 1916, and at that point, not even 100 years. We're, I mean, just regular Joe given a gun, given some training, and said go out and fight. I mean, before you were trained, you had training, you were a career military edifice, structure that was invested in, and now less training, give you a gun, throw you out to shoot. So it's very interesting dynamic, and the whole. Whew, he made some great points about writing home letters, knowing that with the expectation that you'll be dying because you've seen the last 300,000 people right in front of you and get shot in the face, and it's so interesting. I mean, it's like I said, focusing on the human aspect of it. It really, honestly, I would have to say, makes a point for this being homework assignments for young people nowadays if they actually study history. I know it's like the devil or something in schools, but the idea of, yes, this is war, but these are people. This is how they see it. They had trouble. They were real. They didn't just jump up and say, like the cards in some Disney movie, running like just an order. But it's infinitely interesting. I love it. So without further ado, I mean, there's certainly other things that I could mention, talk about, but it's gone all along. And hey, I'm just excited to have finished the episode, and I need some suggestions on which hardcore history I should download, should I buy. So any ideas, love them. So just enjoy the day. Probably check in tomorrow since I'll be delightfully rested and happy. So enjoy the day.